I want to win, but do I want to win like this? I'm of two minds here.
So it's a coin flip.
Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again, and today we're going to be taking just a few minutes to discuss the newest film from DC Animation, Batman: The Long Halloween. Batman: The Long Halloween Part 1 is rated PG-13, running 85 minutes, directed by Chris Palmer, with a screenplay by Tim Sheridan, based on a story by Jeff Loeb. Right on, guys. So, this film is, like with most of these Batman movies we've been getting over the last few years, with a few exceptions, an adaptation of a book, The Long Halloween, which is hailed as kind of one of the greatest Batman stories of all time by many, many people. It's not perfect, it definitely has some shortcomings here and there, but it is considered to be one of the best. And with this adaptation, they kind of were very liberal about how they switched things up, and mind you, we won't be able to really tell how that pans out for them until part 2 of this film, but in this first part, it actually works out pretty well for the most part. As I said, they're very liberal about the things that they change. What I really enjoyed about it, though, is that most of the most iconic scenes from the book still take place, and a lot of the necessary events from the book also still take place. It's just the things around those scenes that are changed, along with some of the characters that participate in them. Catwoman is a much larger presence in this film. In the book, she is there, but there are scenes that in the book she is kind of the lead into, whereas in the movie she actually has a stronger part or a stronger hand in those individual scenes. Similarly with Harvey Dent, he is still there in the movie and still serves basically the same function, appearing in almost all the same of the most iconic scenes that we have from the book. However, his function within those scenes sometimes is a little bit different, and in general they are really playing up kind of the more psychotic or the more kind of damaged side of Harvey Dent a little bit more in this. They're kind of telegraphing the change into Two-Face a little bit more than the book did, which for the movie I do not necessarily mind because we've already seen trailers for part 2, and we know that by part 2 of this movie we're going to see him as Two-Face, which was not necessarily the case in the book. Now, there is a reason for this, and I kind of think that the reason for that plays into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the animation style. Now, the animation style in this film is very different from the book. It's something that they changed in a big bad way, but I actually do not mind it. The animation for the movie is of pretty high quality. There's a few little places here and there where it doesn't look quite as good, but it is still a big improvement over many of the previous DC films that we've gotten. And it kind of seems like it's the same animation style that we've seen in other DC movies that they've come out with recently, like the kind of new Superman movie that they did, and the Flash Justice Society movie, which I did a video on, which you can check out right here at this link. It looks like the same animation style as those movies, so I'm not sure if this is supposed to take place within that same universe or not, but if it does, then that would explain why they're putting this stronger emphasis on Harvey and more telegraphing his change into Two-Face, because this is going to be kind of a building block kind of thing for their world. It makes sense because Long Halloween, by the creators of the book and by many people, it's kind of considered to be like the year 2 of Batman. Mind you, there is a story in Batman continuity called Year 2, but we just kind of pretend that didn't exist because it sucks hardcore. They used a lot of elements of that story and repurposed it in the Batman the Animated Series universe to give us Mask of the Phantasm, and it is a much superior version of that story. So, in this story, yeah, Batman, he's very still kind of new to this, even though a lot of his villains are already established, but we are actually seeing the establishing of several of Batman's villains, so it would make sense if they're trying to put this as part of their new animated universe, why they would be putting this emphasis and this focus on things. But back to the animation style, in general, it all looks pretty good. There are some really awesome fight sequences in the movie, and I feel that, like, even within the animation style they've already established, they managed to get a very interesting kind of moody, noir-esque feel out of many of the scenes, which really complements the story very, very well. So, as for the voice cast of this movie, I'm not going to go into each of the performers individually, although I will state that everyone in this movie actually does a really good job at the characters that they are portraying. All of them kind of blend into the roles, and there is nothing that is like where you're watching it and you're like, oh, okay, well, I know who that person is, and it distracts you from the movie. And the only one that I really want to mention and point out is the one that worried me the most, not because the actor is bad, but because they tend to have a very distinct voice in certain media that they're in, and that is Jensen Ackles playing Bruce Wayne Batman. Now, obviously most people know him from Supernatural, where he has a very deep, gruff voice as the character Dean. But then he has also been in DC animation before as the Red Hood, and he had another voice for that, which was actually a little bit closer to his real voice. In this movie, he does a really good job of not doing Dean and not doing Jason Todd Red Hood, but doing something kind of in the middle that is different and unique to both of those performances, and really, really works well. I really enjoyed his performance. I really dug his version of Batman, and I thought it was executed extremely well. Now, I already mentioned the animation, but I want to specifically talk about the directing in this film. The directing in the film is actually really solid. The film feels very, very cinematic, and it really seemed to understand the limitations of the animation style that it was doing, and figured out ways either around it or ways to play to its strengths. The action sequences are excellent. They are really fantastic. As I said, they are extremely cinematic, and so many of the kind of previous DC animated universe movies that we had that are kind of based on the New 52, a lot of those scenes were very cheap. A lot of them were very, very cheap, and it didn't feel like they were picking camera angles and shots that were the best for the story. More so they were picking things that were best for their budget. And that might still be the case here, but it is far less noticeable, and when you're watching it, it really does feel like every shot, every camera angle that they chose is really there for the dramatic emphasis on the story beat that you're seeing play out. So I have to commend them on this. Like, the directing in this film is absolutely excellent. Okay, so now it's time for me to list a couple of complaints. And this is going to be where the spoilers come in, because in order to kind of discuss one of the things that I have a real issue with, I'm going to have to spoil something that is right towards the end of the movie and is kind of a big moment for the movie. But you know, it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't mention something I didn't like and bitch about it just a little bit. Now, as I said previously, this is supposed to be early on in Batman's career, so he is not the unstoppable, unbeatable, has a contingency for everything Batman that we know from some media, and that I don't actually mind. What I do mind is that they put a lot of emphasis on Batman not only being kind of new at being a detective, but him in fact being a really bad detective. It's said by like 4 or 5 characters throughout the course of this movie that he is a bad detective, and then you also have scenes with Batman saying that he never intended on being a detective, which, that's fine. There are certain elements of that in the story of the book, but in the movie they really drive it home. And in honesty, like in the original book, the whole mystery and detective angle of it is kind of one of the weakest parts. It's kind of like a lot of the Sherlock Holmes stories that we get, where like the only reason why we and the characters don't figure out the mystery sooner is because there are big parts and big things that are left out. And there are things that probably should be picked up on in clues that are revealed throughout the story, but they're more concerned with the twist of the mystery, not giving us the pieces that we need for us to solve it. And that might be the case here as to why they're putting the emphasis on Batman not being a very good detective. It might be another way of kind of obscuring the fact that the mystery, when we finally get a reveal in part 2, might not be this huge revelation, and it might also be a way of them, when they go back and finally show us all the little pieces that make the mystery make sense, a way of them being like, well, see, Batman didn't figure that out because he's not a very good detective. So I'm not exactly sure how I feel about that, but I'm not crazy about it. The other thing that kind of bugged me in this movie, in the book, there's a scene where we have the youngest son of the Roman, where the youngest son of the Roman is a kid who, grew up in boarding schools. He's not a part of... He's Fredo from The Godfather, because the book is basically just half the book is ripped off of Godfather, okay? So he's the Fredo character, and he's never been a part of the family business, and in that book, he is eventually killed on a yacht. I said there were spoilers, not just for the movie, but also for the book, okay? Anyway, in the book that happens, and it is a part of the story, but in this story, Batman comes to the conclusion that this character is the Holiday Killer right at the end of the movie, and goes to the yacht that this big party is happening on so that he can confront him about it. And while Batman is there, Holiday shows up and kills him. And then we get a bit of a chase sequence on this boat, and it all just feels a little bit off. On top of that, right whenever Batman shows up, Selina yells, "Bruce!" right in front of Anton, the son of the Roman, and that also feels a bit off. Like, it doesn't surprise me that she would be surprised by him showing up at that moment, but Catwoman throughout this entire movie is played off as a much cooler character than that, and it seems to kind of go against the character in general. She really loves the idea of her and Batman having these dual identities, and even though they both kind of know who each other are, even in this movie, it's never explicitly stated. So it felt a little bit weird, and it felt a little bit off, and it felt a little bit forced. And despite the fact that they're changing a lot of stuff in the movie, the moment she says that, you know that he's not Holiday, and you know that he's going to die, because it's the only way to keep Batman's secret. Beyond that, as I said, there's a little bit of a chase, and it does not work for me, because there's no reason why Batman shouldn't have been able to get this guy. If he's that close, if he's in that close a proximity to the killer, there's no reason why he shouldn't have been able to get him. He's got a grapple gun, and we just had a sequence with Joker and Batman in an airplane where Batman's using his grapple gun to do all kinds of stuff. So, like, the whole idea of Batman being able to use the grapple gun even on this yacht to catch up to the character, or even when the character of Holiday gets into a boat and is leaving, Batman basically swam to get to this yacht, which also I'm not crazy about. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, okay? Like, he was just on a clock tower. It seems like that's a lot of space to cover. Anyway, there could have been a time jump there. I might be overthinking that aspect of it. But yeah, there's no reason. With everything we've seen of Batman, even with him being new to being Batman, even with him not being a great detective, there's no reason why he should not have been able to catch the killer when he's in that close proximity to the killer. Mind you, there are a couple of moments that they try to throw at you where, like, Holiday is shooting at Batman through a crowd, he's trying to get people down, but it just doesn't work out. The spatial relations and the story bits of that do not make sense to me, and it really wouldn't have been such a big deal, except it's right at the end of the movie. So, but I do have to say that in everything that's in this movie, those are my only real complaints. Everything else about it I really enjoyed and thought was really solid. Right on, guys. So those are my thoughts on Batman The Long Halloween Part 1, but what did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you like this video, please leave a like and share it with some friends. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe so you can check out all the dope content I'll have coming out here in the future. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.